Dealing with evictions, that's today's episode. Let's dive into it.
Here we are at our very first rental property.
Hey everyone, I'm Natalie Morris.
And I'm Clayton Morris.
And today on the show, we're going to talk about dealing with evictions. We're not so much going to give you tips for how to deal with evictions. We're going to let you inside a conversation that we're having around evictions because that's something we're dealing with. Now, it is the end of the year. Rent gets tough, right? Around the holidays. We've actually always found that to be the case. But we're going through some turnovers in some of our portfolio, and we thought we'd let you know how we're feeling about it. I'm not feeling good. I'll just start with that. I don't feel good about it, but I've been an investor long enough to not let it freak me out.
No, I'm not freaked out about it at all. This is sort of a behind the scenes. We thought, you know what, we're actually going to have a discussion right now about our portfolio and about a few of our properties that we're doing some tenant turnovers on and some other things. And I said, you know what, let's just do it on the show. Let's just have
turn on the cameras.
Let's just turn on
Ozzy
the camera
Osbourne.
And have a transparent conversation about what we're dealing with right now. Because we were driving home, I picked her up to getting the car fixed, and she said, "I want to talk to you about a couple of our properties. We have this, that." And I said, "Whoa, wait a second. Let's go home and let's record it, and hopefully other people can benefit from having us kind of pull the wool back from the investing process." So,
right.
So first of all, an eviction. Look, if you're a longtime investor or you're new to the game, guess what? Evictions are going to happen, so they shouldn't be scary. It's part of the process. If you think you're never going to have an eviction, then you should go, I don't know, just focus on your 401k.
I guess, yeah.
Right? Because this is part of the process. Okay.
Yeah. And a lot of times, if I've had a tenant in there for a long time, and evictions usually, I'm kind of like, I start to wonder, what's the condition of the property? Some property managers give me an annual inspection, some don't.
Yeah.
So a lot of times I'm like, okay, well, that's fine. It gives me an opportunity to now spruce it up and turn it over to the next family. I sort of, I like to sort of thank the family that's lived there and emotionally send them on their way with gratitude, right? It's not always a happy, sort of send you on your way, that's great situation though.
No.
But I will say I'm a different person dealing with them now than I was when we got started. When we got started, I found them to be really stressful. And I think the reason is if you unpeel the onion, it's that you think, oh my gosh, this is going to cost me so much money to fix it up. And what if it's in a bad state? And what if I can't get another tenant? Well, I don't really feel like that anymore because one, the repairs I do on it are a tax deduction. Probably the cash flow has been such that I've prepared for this eventuality. And of course I'm going to get another tenant. That's ridiculous thinking.
Yeah, what is
right?
it in a zombie apocalypse? So there's no tenants available anymore, and you're only having to deal with walkers?
Yeah. I mean, there are times when I have
reference
evictions and a tenant turnover for longer than I prefer, and I don't like it. There are times when I've said lower the rent by $30, $50. Never do we go a full 100. I don't think I've ever gone a full 100. These things make a big difference to people who are renting and 900 and 950.
And the good news is it does. Well, that's true. And if they're competitive on the street, that's why you work with a good property manager because they're going to know, hey, what's competitive right now with the market. And at the time of the year too, after you got to think about the holidays, as you pointed out. So people don't like to move during the holidays. People, they get their Christmas trees in there, they get their decorations up, they have the turkey going. They don't want to have to pack up in the winter and get a U-Haul truck and go moving. So it can be a little bit more difficult in some of the winter climates or the colder climate areas. But that's part of it. We kind of gear up for that, and that's fine. So anyway. So let's talk about what we were talking about on the drive home.
Okay.
And some of the properties right now. So we have a couple of properties that we're dealing with right now that have an eviction in process. I think I've mentioned here on the show a couple of times, we had 3 evictions in progress.
In one specific market.
And you'll notice sometimes too, it kind of, sometimes when it rains, it pours. Because that's kind of what happened with us on this. We've got another eviction in this one little area, and this was on our some New Jersey properties that we have.
Right. So there was one that particularly stumped me because we bought it a year ago, and we had an inspection on it. We knew that it was this lady had lived in it for a long time.
We knew we were going to do a tenant turnover eventually.
Right. We knew the condition. I'm not going to say it was beautiful, but it also was like, it was hers. She'd lived in it for a long time. And so I also knew that she was a Section 8 tenant, which we've done a full episode about that. So you should know what that means if you've done your studying.
Yeah.
And so Section 8, about a year into owning it, sent us this laundry list of improvements that they wanted us to do after an inspection. And they said, you've got 2 months to do it, or else we're going to stop paying rental assistance. So basically they're saying, we're going to stop paying rent in 2 months if you don't do it. And now this was like $30,000 worth of work.
Which
and we
is
were
total
like,
garbage.
What?
That's ridiculous. It didn't need that much. And by the way, to kind of back up a little bit, this Section 8, the rental assistance, they're paying, I think, $700 a month. And the tenant is paying
like
$250, so around $1,000 total. But the rental assistance is paying the bulk of it. So they said they would stop paying their portion, and then this tenant, would, I guess, pay the $250, which wouldn't be helpful to us.
Right. So we had a lot of talks with our property management and with our legal team, and all of them had said, we've never seen a list this extensive before. We don't know why they're doing this to you. This is egregious. And from last year's inspection, it's like these things were still outstanding last year. They didn't ask the previous owner to do all of this. Maybe they're just sort of taking advantage that there's a new owner. So we sent them a list. We said, look, we can do these things by your next inspection date, but we can't do all of it. Also, some of it is the tenant's responsibility. So we shouldn't be having to, fix up things that she is keeping in this condition. These are things we could take out of the security deposit.
Right, tenant damage, right?
Right.
That would be her responsibility.
And so we sent them this letter. We did the repairs that we had sort of highlighted on the sheet, and then they never got back to us. And so it was really odd. My lawyer sent them another letter saying, we are going to consider your non-response compliance, that we are now in compliance with your requests unless you ask us for more. And they didn't get back to us.
This is good old government bureaucracy for you.
Right. In the meantime, they have not skipped a rent payment at all. They threatened to do it, but they made their payment as recently as 2 days ago.
The Section 8.
Right. And the tenant in the meantime was asking, can I renew my lease? Because she wants to stay another year. She likes it there.
And we want to take care of the repairs that are on the list that should be taken care of by a landlord.
We have done.
Can you give me an example of a few of the things? Oh, we've already taken care of them?
We have, yeah.
Okay. What are some of the things?
Like broken windows, sills, like it wasn't latching properly, that kind of thing. Now, there had been damage done to the cabinets. And those are things that we can hold her accountable for. The problem is I don't want to hold her feet to the fire because she's not the one making noise and she's keeping the cabinets in this state, right? But she's also disabled and elderly. Like it does me no good to strong arm her when it's Section 8 that's causing the issue, not her, right?
Right, so she loves the place. We're fixing up the items that are our responsibility, but we're also not like, hey, old lady, you're elderly and you're disabled and you need to fix all these things up. It's like, no, if you broke them, which clearly you did because we have the previous inspection where the cabinets are fine. So, right?
Right. These are things that are on her lease. They're her responsibility.
They're her responsibility. Yeah. And okay, so this is the thing, right? We're having this discussion. So at what point... you want to have a big heart about it, right? So we could be total meanies about this, right? Grinch time. And
Watch your language there,
I don't want to
sir.
use, this is a family-friendly show, so I don't want to use language like normal New Jersey language.
Mm-hmm. Darn it.
So we
don't want to be
right?
darn meanies.
Well, we could. Right?
We could.
And I've talked to a lot of landlords who are like, no, you're renting from us. You're renting from us. And therefore, it's my way or the highway. But that's not how we are.
Right. Our lawyer has said that we consider your non-response non-compliance and we could move forward with an eviction. But I absolutely do not want to do that because it's not her fault. Then we're punishing her for, this being stuck in bureaucracy. And so at this point, I'm fine to give her another lease. And I've thought about it. What's the worst that could happen is they circle back around and say, we warned you we're not going to pay our rent. And then we have to fight with them. And then we're stuck with just her $200 a month and not that extra government assistance, right? That would be bad. But at the same time, do I sort of weigh that eventuality with the fact that I'm going to evict an elderly disabled lady because rental assistance is not being helpful to me, the tenant? It just, that doesn't sit well, right?
Yeah, to me, the landlord.
To me, the landlord. I'm not the tenant.
Yeah. So the bottom line solution on this one is that, okay, they haven't responded to the lawyers, and they're continuing to pay her rent, the rental assistance portion. She's current on her rent, so she's paying her portion. We've taken care of the repairs that were our responsibility. Maybe that was enough to satisfy them. And then, of course, when this tenant moves out, whenever that is, in a few years, who knows? Then we'll go in and do a tenant turnover. We'll probably replace the cabinets. We'll see what damage is actually done, and that will be deducted from security deposits, etc. But look, you always, on a tenant turnover, it's incredibly rare that you're going to have a tenant move out and leave it in the exact same condition from when they came in. It's just, it doesn't matter if it's C-class properties, B-class properties, or A-class properties. We've talked about it before, had an A-class condo in downtown San Francisco that was trashed by A-class tenants. So it doesn't really matter. You're going to have paint to touch up. You're going to have carpet probably to replace. You may have cabinets to fix, towel racks to tighten, doorknobs to tighten, those types of things. So we'll go in and see what it looks like.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's one of them.
Right.
All right. So we've had, and there's two more that we're dealing with now too, right?
Right.
So we had one woman who we had to go through an eviction process with because she apparently, I guess, didn't pay attention to her lease and brought in like some mean, scary big dogs.
I think the issue was not the temper of the dogs, the temperament, because you can't evict someone for a mean dog.
You can, well, I mean, look, if they violate I don't know exactly. I guess it's state to state, but if your lease agreement can have a size and weight class of a dog. So if it exceeds like 60 pounds or whatever, they can say.
I guess if it's like biting people, okay. Let's not use
We're
me
not
as
lawyers.
the authority on.
Yeah, she's not a
on what kind of like temperament of dog you can have as a tenant. I know that there is a number of dogs. Like she had more than the allotted number of dogs.
Oh, okay.
Not just by her lease, but the city's ordinance as well.
Okay.
She had more than the city allowed, and they were reported to us as particularly aggressive. There's a special needs child. It's a duplex who lives in the next building. They said it was really upsetting her. And so, of course, this was upsetting us. And so we had not only these complaints from the neighbors about the dogs and the city about the dogs, but also she wasn't paying rent. And so it was upsetting because... Well,
there you go. So now on that, hold on, let's back up. So...
Okay, you need to stop interrupting me, please.
No, but if you read some of our comments, you say, "Why she interrupts him all the time."
I'm allowed to
interrupt you. Yeah, go ahead and rewind this and see who interrupted who. And post in the comments and let us know who.
I'm going to give you an Al Gore sigh on that one.
So no, but you make this little aside. You're like, oh, and by the way, she's not paying rent. No, that's the major part of it, right? So if she, on the one hand, she has big dogs, okay, and maybe she's violating lease agreement because she has more than the allotment of dogs on her lease or the size of the dog. And okay, that's one issue. And then you have the special needs child on the other side of the duplex that's having issues and is really upset because the dog scares her. Then that's a problem, right? Then what do you do? Because she's violating a lease, then we can talk to her, have the property manager say she's got to get rid of these dogs. Otherwise, she's going to be evicted. So that's one part. But then she also stopped paying rent. So for me, okay, that's an easy one. That's an easy eviction.
Yeah. And she's gone back and forth with being behind in rent and caught up, being behind and caught up. So
she was playing a game.
As soon as the dog issue became a thing, I was like, well, okay, what do I do about it, right? Mm-hmm. Because New Jersey's a very tenant-friendly state. I can't just evict her because you're upsetting the neighbor child. Do I have legal grounds for this? And then she would catch up on the rent. And so I had been sort of trying to move forward with an eviction since the spring, and now we're in December. And so finally she did fall behind on the rent, and we had a lockout. We won the eviction in court, and we had a lockout last week, and it went pretty smoothly. We're going to have to now turn that one over.
So what happens in a lockout? And number one, by the way, New Jersey, again, here's an example, something I've talked about before. Never buy properties in a tenant-friendly state. Buy them in a landlord-friendly state. Not because you want to be a meanie to tenants, but because, look, we tried to go through this in April or May of this year, and now it's almost the new year, and we still don't have this person evicted. So that's New Jersey for you. So
right.
Note to self, this is,
Well, the issue is you have to have a lawyer who represents you for an eviction if you own a property in an LLC in New Jersey. And she kept catching up, right? So our eviction process was like a start and stop kind of thing.
Because she was playing a game. Yeah.
I don't want to repute her intentions. I don't know. I don't think someone like keeps mean, scary dogs unless they're otherwise like afraid of the world in some way. So, the saying hurt people hurt people. I don't know her pain, right? But what I do know is that my empathy leans towards the child next door. And I can't let her live there for free, scaring other tenants, right? This is not an easy decision to make. It's not easy for me to sit here and be like, well, you don't pay your rent, lady, get out, right? She lives there. This was her home. It's hard. It's hard to think about. Like I think about these things at night.
Well, I mean, you and I think, err on the side of compassion when it comes to tenants who, have fallen behind on rent, or the property manager will come to us and say, look, here's the situation. This is an elderly veteran. They have now gotten caught up on their payments. They missed a month, but now they're current. Do you want to evict them? No, I don't, right? And if they're making a good faith effort to get caught up and pay their rent, you're also not running a charity as well. So we bought a property in order to make cash flow, in order for it to be a performing asset. So we donate a lot of money to charity. That's totally separate from a performing asset. Now, if the tenant is taking advantage of you and they're getting caught up on their rent right before they know the cutoff's about to happen, and then they stop paying again, so they get another 3 months of free ride of living in the property, that's what's known as a professional tenant. And you'll have these professional tenants from time to time who know how to play this game and who know when to cut off and when to make the payment so that it starts the cycle over and over again.
Well, we have someone in the same neighborhood, a separate unit, who is a disabled veteran, and he gets behind on his rent pretty regularly. And then right before we get into the eviction process, or right when we're right in the middle of the eviction process, he has had twice now a Veterans Affairs group step up and pay the back rent and the legal fees for that eviction process. And that's particularly heartbreaking because he's searching for help. There's a group that supports our veterans that's willing to help him. I don't want to evict him, right? And every time this comes up, so our property manager said, I'd like to have a conversation with him and to ask him, does he have a better handle on when this assistant can come along? Because we can charge him every 3 months if that's how this works, right? Let's come up with a solution so that we don't have to stress you out every time. We don't have to stress ourselves out every time. If you want to stay and you think you can get this assistance, let's work with him. We're willing to do that, right? But the other situation where we won the eviction in court, how that works is that you give the tenant notice, okay, you've been evicted. The court says this is the case. If they don't move out voluntarily after they've received that final judgment, then the sheriff will come and do what's called a lockout. You change the keys, you can take their stuff out, and then they just can't come back. So they've had a notice. It's not like they haven't known they were in evictions and then were notified of the eviction judgment, and then eventually you do a lockout. And like I said, our property manager said that went smoothly. So I don't have any details other than that.
Okay, because I was going to say, in that process, sometimes they don't leave, but that's a pain, right? Because if they don't leave and they're waiting for the sheriff to come, that's a problem. And then the sheriff shows up, has to throw out all their stuff, get a dumpster, throw it all out. That's not good. They have to forcibly remove them from a property. That can be a problem. Also, though, if you can have it remedied somehow, and I've heard landlords doing this where they'll say, look, cash for keys, because a lot of times now you've gone through the eviction process, they may trash the house. They may be pissed off, right? And they're going to punch holes in the drywall. They're going to do some other things to you. And in order to mitigate that, maybe you talked with your property manager about, can we do cash for keys? Look, $500, we'll show up, check, make sure there's no damage. We'll give you $500, you give us the keys, and we'll be on our way.
I've never heard of this.
Yeah, it's common because that way it's protection. It's mitigating the fact that, they might punch a whole bunch of holes in the wall or do some nefarious things to the cabinets and other stuff. They already know they're going to lose their security deposit anyway. So for them, it's just like, I'm going to stick it to you, the landlord, for kicking me out. Hey, here's $500. Let's just part ways and you don't damage our place. So these
I would
are things.
definitely do that. Yeah.
I mean, but here you go. So, all right, good. We got a resolution on one of them. It seems like there's somewhat of a stasis right now.
Yeah.
One of them, okay, we've got a lockout.
We could do another update a year from now and be like, yeah, we were stuck with just her $200 because Section 8 stopped paying. But you know what? I'm going to kind of like hope that the universe rewards us for making a compassionate choice, and I don't know. We'll let you know.
We will give you an update on that one. But then the other one, there's a lockout. So now we're going to go through the tenant turnover process, clean it out, get it ready for another tenant.
Yes, we are.
The veteran, right now, everything seems to be good. We're trying to work out something with him so that he can stay and be happy.
Yeah.
And, okay, so there you go. So that's a little update. 3 properties in evictions. Don't be scared about it. That's what we do around here, right?
That's not always what we do, but it seems to be what we're doing right now.
Yeah.
So,
but we've got how many other properties? Almost 50 other properties that are fine.
Right.
And
that's why you diversify your portfolio. You have in several markets. You have, several different performing assets. So, and we've prepared for this eventuality. And like Clayton mentioned, the house in San Francisco, when that house was trashed, I did not take it this well because it was the only one I had. I couldn't afford the repairs. It was in San Francisco where everything was more expensive. And I think just, once you've got some time under your belt, you're kind of like, okay, I'm ready to solve this, you know?
So thanks so much for subscribing. We'll see you next time here on the show. Now go out there, take action, and become a real estate investor. Don't let evictions scare you. It's part of the process. We'll see you next time.